Welcome to the Free Chess app. Very excited about this win against computer level 12. Used a series of pins. Let's break down how it happened. Opening move, pretty basic. Just bringing the pawn forward to try to take control of the center. They play their pawn forward. I decided to play the knight to c3. They bring their knight forward. I bring my other knight forward. They bring their other knight forward. Okay, I decide to put a bishop on the b5 square. Not the greatest decision, not the worst decision. I'm just trying to develop here. They play a pawn forward, or not pawn forward, bishop forward, sorry. Right there. And it's going to put pressure on my pawn structure. I mean, that's kind of what I'm trying to do on the other end. I decided to play pawn a2 to a3. Not sure if that's the best move. Maybe I could develop more. I'm just trying to see what they're doing. I want to answer the question of the bishop. Maybe that's something I should leave for later on, but that's how it gets played. They take with the bishop. I capture with the pawn on b2. Try to consolidate. Get my pieces more centralized, at least on the right side. They go ahead, and this is where I'm vulnerable here, because now that exposes the pawn. You see that pawn right there on e4. You got a knight in position. Next move for me, I decide to capture with my bishop. That's going to actually develop their queen. But again, I have the pawn on d2 defended by at least 3 pieces. Right there is where I decide to castle. So I've lost a lot of pieces so far, and I haven't really got a good line of attack on the king, but we're going to come up with that later as we go on. They play the bishop forward right here. I decide to give up on the knight. Well, not totally give up. I play the pawn forward to see what they're doing, and to kind of give my king an escape hatch. For later, possibly, which could be valuable. So they decided to take, and I decided to capture with the queen right there. Next move right here is going to be they're capturing with their knight. They're taking the pawn here. They're not giving it for free, though. And I kind of have to make a move here because you can notice my queen and my rook are forked. So my only real choice that I see here is to capture with the bishop, which leaves that open to being captured by the queen. Okay. So we're basically down to the end game. We've got 2 rooks, they've got 2 rooks, we've got a queen. The question is, can we break apart what they have? Can we get a line of attack going here? So my first order of business is to get develop a rook. I decided to go to the rook on the right side. So I move rook f1 to d1. It's obviously protected by the rook. What I'd like to do is go after potentially the b7 pawn or work some stuff out. I'm also trying to, if you let the computer have, especially at this level, with the highest possible level, if you let them have a wide open range of decisions, they're gonna find the best way to break you apart. What I'm doing right here is I'm narrowing down their decision path, their decision tree. They decide to play queen back to g5 right there. And then I follow with the rook a1 to b1, threatening the b7 pawn. They decide to castle. There was a number of different decisions they could have gone. They decided to go with a castle. That's kind of what I wanted, because I take with the rook. So I broke open their pawn structure. So we both have pawn structures on the left side that are broke open. What I'm looking to do is see if I can bring pressure before they can. That's the goal here, and it's going to be very challenging to execute here. So they play queen back. Right there. There's a number of pieces that are being defended. There's a lot of different. This move right here opened up a lot of stuff. There's a lot of different ways it can be played because of the way this is sorted out here. I can't really show. A lot of things that can be done with a rook, a lot of things that can be done with a queen. There's a lot of variations here. I could take the pawn on c6 with the queen. I could capture the c7 pawn. there's a lot of stuff I could have. So they play queen back to try to defend one of those pieces. So one of the things you have to look at here is basically, you know, certain pieces, how many defenders do they have, and can you break apart that? So what I decided to do is rook captures the c7 pawn. What I'm looking to do is potentially overload the f7 pawn, or that's my initial thought right here. It's not going to work out, as you'll see later on. I had to go to a different method, but that's my initial plan of attack. And obviously you can't, you have to be flexible in your attacks if you want to have a chance of success here. So they play queen takes, okay, taking one of my pawns. This was a debatable one. I thought this over for a while. I decided to play rook, just bring the rook forward from d1 to d7, again attacking the f7 pawn. They play queen c2 to a2, defending that pawn. Now they have 1, 2, 3 defenders. You count the queen, the f8 pawn, or f8 rook, and the g8 king. So what I decided to do next is capture, and what I'm looking to do is give myself some more options here. So I took the rook and c7, and I captured the that pawn right there. It's also defended by the queen. Black plays queen to takes a3, basically. So they basically taking apart all my pawns. What my next plan is, I'm thinking, okay, they're not going to give me that pawn here. What I'm thinking about doing now is establishing a pin. Basically, what I decided to do is move the queen right there from f3 to g4. I'm looking to pin the g7 pawn. So potentially with that, oops, one move too far. I'm looking to pin the g7 pawn. Probably, I'm thinking about taking the rook to, like, say, h6, because it's pinned, so they can't move that pawn. Okay? They play queen a3 check, or to a1 check. Okay? That's why I opened that escape hatch. I play king g1 to h2, fair enough. My king's pretty well defended. I don't care about losing a ton of these pawns. I do have the c3 pawn defended right now, but I'm not super concerned about that. I'm looking to bring the rooks and the queen, maybe a pawn, work them together, and close in on black's king position, because I've got my rooks developed. They don't have their rooks developed. Pieces aren't worth anything if they're not developed. You got to have pieces developed if you want to be able to utilize them. So it's easier said than done, of course, but you want to utilize your pieces. So I play queen, or they play queen a1 to c1. Okay, what they're doing right there is they recognize the h6, rook to h6, so they've taken that away. So I decide to audible out of this. After thinking it over for a while, I decide something totally different. I decide to move the rook on d7 to d3. Not the original plan. The new line of thought is to get the rook to g3 and threaten checkmate. Obviously, black's not going to have it. They're just going to move the pawn forward to, like, say, g6. But we're going to try to use a pawn to break apart that position. We also have a rook well placed. So that's the plan there. He played queen c1 to c2, obviously threatening the rook, but it's more so threatening being able to defend with the queen. But again, the black's big problem here, they've got two rooks that are not being used. We're using our rooks. We're potentially using our pawn. That's going to be the difference here in why we get the win. So I play rook, right to g3, like I said. That was the plan all along. Okay, they play the pawn forward because they have to, because I'm threatening checkmate right there. So they have to play the pawn forward from g7 to g6. Okay, now the question for you is, how do you break apart this position? My thought was to attack with the pawn. That's this pawn right here. Just slowly move it forward. And then combine with, we have a rook on c6. My thinking is we have more pieces than they have. So we take the pawn there. They play queen takes our pawn on f2. I'm not super concerned about that. I'm giving it the piece there but I'm more concerned with the position and attacking what they have. I've got my king well defended. The pawn on g2 is well defended. It's got 2 defenders, or 3 defenders counting the king. So that pawn is solid. We're looking to attack. So again, I'm going to move the pawn forward right there. They decide to develop one of their rooks, a8 to b8. This is black's biggest problem here. They didn't have the rooks developed. So that's how we're able to attack this position. I decided to capture with the pawn there. Okay. So black is going to recapture with one of the pawns. They decide to go with the h7 pawn. So how do we get checkmate here? Well, we're going to sacrifice our rook. Right there, rook takes. Rook takes pawn on g6. Black's going to capture with a pawn. Now we take with our queen, check. Our queen is backed by the rook. Black cannot block. Black is cornered. Black, moves king out of the way, and it's checkmate, and that's the game right there. So pretty cool. Got that one done. This is a good example of how to use a pin and combine some other pieces to get the win there. So big win there. And if you're looking for more tips on chess, there's a link in the description below to 3 different playlists. One is Chess for Beginners. It talks about like pens, forks, stuff like that, the basics. Another one is Chess Problems, which I found helped out a lot. That's for the pure chess game for the PS4. There's like 100 different problems, I believe, on there. They're all sorted in a playlist. It's sorted by views. I tend to think that the best ones to do are the mate and 4, mate and 5 ones because they're pretty hard. But the most viewed ones are probably like mate and 2, mate and 3 problems. And of course, there's going to be a playlist for games against the highest possible level of different chess engines. Right now, I got 3 chess engines on there. The Chess Free app for the phone, Pure Chess, and there's a Majestic Chess one. That's an older one for a computer one. There's a couple games on there. And yeah, that'll wrap it up. Thanks for watching, and good luck.